Tonight's video is going to be on something that, again, it's following a theme, and I didn't intend this to be a series with the New Mexico hospital situation, with the teacher alcohol issues that I posted in a video here. But it's once you start getting down this rabbit hole, you start realizing, I think that we, from a stigma perspective alone, have different versions that we put on people in terms of their alcohol use. So if you're, a teacher, we might think a certain way about that teacher and how dare she do this in front of a school. If I am a person like me that was in business and had was an amateur fighter and all these other things I had going on, the amateur fighter part, they might just say he's a knucklehead. He probably, they're all just crazy. The business person, they would say, entitlement, elitism. There's a lot of different stigmas we put on, and I've faced a lot of different ones over the years for sure. Some are just dumb drunk. You're so stupid. Because if you're in business, or if you've got a good professional career, then you must be dumb if you've got an addiction problem. It's not mental health. Your trouble that you get into has nothing to do with that. You're just dumb, is what I've heard an awful lot. So what I find interesting, though, is that then we start putting that over on what has come out around the pandemic, I think, is that at least highlighted the fact that first responders are under a tremendous amount of mental health stress. And with that comes a lot of addiction that was kind of hush-hush for a lot of years. It has been manifesting itself in law enforcement pretty frequently. Tonight's video, I want to share with you some stuff. Now, again, I am not defending law enforcement on this. I'm also not attacking them necessarily, but there are going to be a few things I'm going to point out tonight that when it relates to law enforcement specific to alcohol use or substance use, there appears to me to be a double standard with their the things they quote unquote face together. Gives them a little bit, even society, I think we look a lot of times at law enforcement officers and we automatically put they're under a lot of stress in this job that they have, which I'm not saying they aren't. But anyway, neither here nor there. I'll get into the video. So the first one I'm going to show here is a police officer that's in uniform. And I'll get into that for you now and just take a look at what's going on here. I won't go through all of it, but you'll get to see what I'm talking about.
And a Apopka police officer faces a drunk driving charge tonight after he was pulled over on the 4th of July for reckless driving in full uniform in his police cruiser.
WESH 2's Amanda Dukes reports investigators say the officer's blood alcohol level was actually almost 4 times the legal limit when he was arrested in Eustis.
So can you just put your hands on the roof for me?
Body camera video.
I'd like to point out that he's not the only law enforcement that I found that had 4 times the legal limit. That may seem odd to, that may seem extraordinary, but he's definitely not unique. And I'll explain some thoughts on that as we go into this.
Video shows Eustis police stopping 25-year-old Apopka police officer Oscar Mayorga around 6 p.m. on July 4th.
6 p.m.
Witnesses had reported Mayorga had been driving his police cruiser recklessly on 441. One of those witnesses followed him
all over the road, stopping in the middle of the street, off the road.
As police talk with Mayorga, he slurs his words and struggles with his balance.
I'm not sure when his shift started, but if they do a 3 to 11 shift, 11 to 7 and such, I mean, if they do the shifts I think they do around here, that means he's been 3 hours in a patrol car. And yeah.
Tells them he was scheduled to work the night shift.
Hey, if you work nights, where are you going right now?
I have to work.
So he works nights, so he's 11 to 7, and he's out driving around his patrol car at 6.
Eustis police say they found an open container of beer in the cup holder of Mayorga's car. Initially, Mayorga is heard telling them he suffers from seizures and had taken several Benadryl, but had not been drinking alcohol.
There is an open container of alcohol in your vehicle. Have you been drinking at all today?
No, that's maybe 3 days old.
Okay. I smell the alcohol coming from your breath.
Police had EMS check Mayorga out.
Are you going to go to the hospital?
I mean, I guess so.
Do you want to go?
Not really, but
Mayorga refused transport to the hospital, and according to the arrest affidavit, he then admitted to drinking 3 tall boys of beer 2 hours earlier. He also said he was driving back towards Eustis because he decided he was in no condition to go to work. Police say a breathalyzer measured his blood alcohol content at almost 0.4.
So 0.4, that's scary. So he's operating a patrol car with a 0.4 BAC, which is very scary. If it's a blood alcohol level, that was blood alcohol count, but I think count or content. But if you do blood alcohol levels, which is like the blood draw they do, and if it's in a 4, I mean, he's in danger of, very serious medical issues. So that's one. So now what's interesting is that obviously this is a very serious situation, but when I went to look for another, I was actually looking for a different one that I'd come across. That individual was a law enforcement officer. Again, it's always a couple that they have to drink, but that one, he alleged that he drank 6 p.m. the night before and then he said how long, he said to 7 p.m. And here he was, a shift that started at like 7 o'clock in the morning. It was 8:30. He got pulled over and he had a 0.24. So another excessive. So I was looking for that and found this. And so that leads to what I'm going to share with you now. So I was out looking for a very specific video, which I thought would be pretty easy to find because I didn't think this would be too prevalent. And then I couldn't find that one because of the volume and found the one I just shared with you. And so now I'm going to share another observation. And this is not just to law enforcement. And so I'm just going to scroll down through here. Make sure I'm sharing this correctly. I'm going to scroll down through here, and I'm not going to read every one of them, but I'm just going to point out what's here. The first one's a DWI from a regular person, but then you got Ohio cop arrested, police captain suspected of DUI, Michigan sheriff arrested, Arizona judge busted, Ohio cop suspended, Indiana lawmaker arrested, Cincinnati police officer pulled over, off-duty Union cop DWI, Florida cop arrested. You get the point. Cop wrestles DUI suspect. That's a civilian. So you get the point. Most of this is IMPD officers drunk driving arrest. Florida cop booked. So anyway, and then mixed in with Pawn Stars people. But anyway, you get the idea. It's prevalent. Now, one would argue that the reason it's on YouTube so much is there's probably why I'm doing the video actually is there's some interest and intrigue in the fact that, and maybe some maliciousness to say, look, yeah, cops, you're not so innocent. Well, I will say some observations about this. And I started the video with saying that, how we view things is different based on where somebody stands. I'm not sure if I worded it exactly that way, but that's generally what I'm saying is your position in life is a lot of how we view your criminality. And one thing that really bothers me about law enforcement arrests is the fact, from what I've seen in a lot of these videos, now some of them the cops are just disgusted by their behavior and they get treated a little bit more antagonistically. I would say it goes the other way. But most of them, you hear words like professional courtesy. And in fact, the one I was actually trying to find, the person that blew a 2-4 an hour and a half into their shift in uniform in a patrol car, which is morning time with kids going to school and everything else, they showed him extreme professional courtesy to the point that they walked with him beside him to a tent in a parking lot adjacent to where he was to go through his field sobriety tests. Then when they went back over, they didn't parade him through. They helped him. They let him sit in the front seat of the patrol car that they were taking him away in. I mean, just over the top for a man that is a .24. 3 times the legal limit. He was there, and they were treating him with professional courtesy. I can tell you, in my situation, there is none of that. And also in most arrests that I've had, they have not been bad with me. But the point is, there's no consideration for the humanity of the person you're arresting. I deserve to be arrested, so please don't go down that road with me. All I'm saying is that if you're a law enforcement officer relative to stigma and another law enforcement officer arrests you, they go out of their way to make sure that that other cop is not getting a bad look on this thing. However, if you're just a civilian and you get in that situation, you're going to find you're treated not the same. I think we can all agree it's going to be at least you're treated differently. So for my law enforcement friends that are tuning in and a couple really close friends, I'm not crapping all over your profession or all cops or anything else. All I'm saying is that from a stigma standpoint, there's a couple things in play here. One is, as a cop, I feel, and actually there were lawmakers in there, judges, I've seen senators and congressmen and everything else in there, professional athletes. Everybody feels like they got some standing that puts them above the law. Not everybody. Many people in those positions consider themselves above the law in some respect. And by nature, the law enforcement community many times will treat them as if they're a special application of the law. And from a stigma standpoint, that's one thing, is that's perpetuated because a lot of people behave that way. The second thing is that me as a regular citizen shouldn't be treated less than because I don't carry a badge and I didn't choose that job because I chose some other line of work. Because I assure you that if I'm a law enforcement officer and I put on a badge and I'm supposed to be upholding the law, and I go get in a patrol car and at 8:30 in the morning I get a 2.24 arrest DUI, I would argue that that's worse than a regular citizen driving around struggling with addiction and making horrible decisions, if we're going to argue about rankings of these types of things. I guess it boils down to this for me, and the main reason why I'm doing the show. One is to reframe our thinking when we look at this. Law enforcement officer, Joe Schmo, teacher, whatever else, alcohol is a thief and doesn't clock out when you clock into work. Addiction is a thief and it doesn't clock out when you clock into work. There was one in that string of videos that I tried to share with you that I was just briefly perusing. There's a councilman high on heroin in a parking lot in the middle of the day. Clearly that's, that person had to step down from the city council and had other, ramifications for his life. But, addiction doesn't clock out. So it doesn't matter what you're wearing. So what I would ask is that when we're viewing people that are struggling with addiction, view them based on the journey they're going through, and assist where you feel like you want to assist and don't where you don't. But save your judgment and make sure it's equally dispersed if you feel the need to pass judgment across the same, dispense it the same for everybody. And partly maybe some of this is my own personal bias coming through. And I'll speak to my own personal story. I have law enforcement in my family. Also have a bunch of military in my family too. I have family that I've noticed a correlation between my family, heavy believers in God. I find, at least from my own experience, not just only my family, but also with others, those that are lean towards law enforcement and also lean towards a version of God, their view of me was that I was stupid. Like literally say it. He's stupid. Cut him off. Let him go. And there's a bias that I have when I start watching all these cops drunk all over the place and say, well, are they stupid too? That falls. Or if it's a church pastor that's got a heroin problem, is he stupid too? So I guess I would just caution that look at who you're talking about. It's a human being. If you want to get involved in their life and support them, but recognize that if you're in a situation where you are carrying a badge or doing something else there, you're not exempt. You're not at all. Don't think you are. And you're probably heading to more destruction and more public embarrassment than anything based on the function and the role that you have, depending on how much quote unquote professional courtesy is extended to you in your arrest. I watch these arrests and then you see the arrogant ones, and I can see they even irritate their counterparts on the thin blue line when they start getting arrogant with the cops around them. I saw a sheriff on the other night. There was a sheriff that got arrested, and he showed up at a scene with a witness he was trying to protect that was involved in some stuff that ended up by getting him arrested. But he showed up drunk, and they gave him a pass for showing up at the scene of they were serving a warrant. Another police agency was serving a warrant, and this sheriff showed up drunk at the scene in a vehicle that he drove to the scene, and they gave him a pass. They later arrested him for his involvement in the crime that was the warrant was being served for. But it's clearly if I show up at the scene of a crime, even telling them about something I observed and not even involved in it, if I got alcohol in my breath, they're going to investigate me for sure. So the double standard doesn't work for me, but that's not really the point of the video. The point of the video is that when I say it's closer than it seems, that your high risk living has unintended consequences and it can all fall apart. It doesn't matter what badge you're wearing, what position you hold, or how much money you have or anything. If I've not made that point enough on here, then I don't know what else to tell you on it. So guys, I hope you enjoyed the video tonight. It's probably the last I'm going to do on picking on some of this stuff because I think you guys get the point. I'm just trying to illustrate a few of these that are very public that we can look at. I've done everything from a football player that killed somebody, a couple teachers that were heavily intoxicated working with children, to now this law enforcement situation. I don't believe that there was substance use involved in some of the things I'm pointing out in New Mexico. And oh, by the way, with New Mexico, there was another baby at another hospital that was right right down the road from the one I was talking about. So I point all these things out just to say that it doesn't matter your walk of life. We're all at risk. There's none of us exempt from it. Alcohol does not clock out. Addiction does not clock out. And that's just how it is. And we're seeing examples of this every single day if we keep our eyes open to it. From now until the next time we talk, guys, please take a look at your own life. When you're looking at somebody an addiction, if you don't want to get involved in that situation, I probably would support that, because supporting somebody through their addiction is one of the most exhausting things you'll ever do, especially if it's somebody you love. The lies, the inconsistency, the false promises, the reoccurrences, the just no faith, no trust, all that. It's oftentimes way too much for even the strongest support system. So if you're not going to be involved in it, that's fine. What I would say, though, is that make sure that your judgment is balanced. There's not better drunks than other drunks. It doesn't work that way. There's not better addicts than other addicts. It does not work that way. They're human beings and they're struggling. And if you don't want to participate in their recovery, don't. If you do, there are many rewards, and choose what it is that is healthy for you and your boundaries. If you happen to be somebody that's struggling with alcohol and you think you're being slick, I said this, I think, in the last video. If you think you're being slick and that people don't know, they do. If you put on your uniform and you've drank it all within the last 24 hours to excess, don't. Call in sick. Don't do it, because there's too much at risk and people will notice. Guys, thank you for tuning in. Please like, subscribe, and share. Got some cool stuff happening the next week. I'll get on here and share with you. But until the next time we talk, please stay out of trouble.